It's hard to talk about without getting choked up. Like, the greatest thing these men have done for me, what made the biggest impression on me in my entire life, is they simply made time for me. And as the child of an alcoholic that always wondered where everybody was, wanted to know if he was safe and am I gonna be okay? The fact that a guy, whenever I call him, picks up, and whenever I bring something to him, has a solution for me. So all those movies and all that resume stuff, it's impressive, but it can't touch where I'm at today.
What up, it's Mr. X to the Z Exhibit.
What's up, guys? It's Andy Frisella.
This is your boy, Farley.
This is Ryan Serhant.
This is Shingy.
Hi, it's Patrick McNiven.
This is Sonia Sarvatani.
This is Director X.
Hey, everybody, I'm Forbes Riley.
Yo, this is Goldie.
This is Amberly Lago.
This is Chris Voss.
Michael Francis here.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna.
Hey, what's up? It's Billie Jean.
And you're listening to The Run GpG
podcast.
Well, I'm going to go hang out and listen to David's next podcast from The Run GpG.
You might hear something you like. Peace.
Jay Mohr is a versatile entertainer known for his sharp wit and undeniable talent as a comedian, actor, and author. Jay first gained recognition as a cast member on Saturday Night Live and cemented his status as a standout performer with his iconic role as Bob Sugar in the movie Jerry Maguire. Jay went on to star in multiple movies and hit TV shows over the years like Action and Gary Unmarried. Jay is also an accomplished writer, authoring the critically acclaimed memoir Gasping for Airtime. Jay continues to entertain audiences with his headline shows and stand-up comedy specials across various platforms. Jay, it's an honor. Great to have you here. Welcome to the Run GpG podcast.
Woo, let's go. Big D, my man.
As I was saying, that was the greatest entry into a Zoom meeting ever. I appreciate you being here. Love the energy.
You're not fired up. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, we got it made. The game is fixed in our favor.
It really is. The fact that we can do this on a Friday morning is wild, isn't it? You know, we can sit here and do this. This is crazy. Got some mutual friends, as we learned, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, some hitters too. Ice Cube, 1B, Riz. Come on. So yeah, talking about RZA before we started. My best RZA story is I was on the beach. This is when Ghost Dog came out, and that was like his big first soundtrack. And I actually went back to the theater just to bug out on the soundtrack. Saw it like 3-4 times. I'm on Santa Monica Beach by the pier with my 3-year-old son, and RZA is just standing there with his kid, this beautiful kid with long braids and hair. And RZA's like so much taller than you think. He's like 6'6". He's a lot of dude. And I go up to him, I go, yo, Resurrector, I got to tell you, man, I'm so impressed by the work you do. And I saw Ghost Dog 4 times. I saw it the last 2 times just to bug out on the soundtrack. Respect. And he goes, yo, Lord, that's peace. That's peace. Thank you, son. I go, and your daughter is beautiful. He goes, yo, that's my son, dude. I pretended I had 2 kids and I couldn't find the second one. I grabbed my 3-year-old. I'm like, where's Jimmy? Jimmy! And I just walked away like I was panic stricken looking for a lost child.
That's the last guy. That's the last guy I would have done that to.
Yeah, it gave me chills.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it may have made up since then.
I haven't seen him since. That was my one RZA encounter, except for when I was told for my intervention I was going to interview Wu-Tang Clan. That's how they took me to go to my intervention.
Is that actually how they got you to the intervention?
Yeah, like you can't just tell a drug addict like, hey, we're all going to meet up and talk. It's like, yeah, nice try. So they said when my podcast More Stories was going. They said, listen, my friend, a comedian, Skylar Stone, hit me up. He goes, bro, I got you Wu-Tang. RZA, I got you the whole crew. 8 a.m. tomorrow morning at your house. And I was like, really? He goes, really? I'm like, great. And I was so high, I thought that was true. I thought Wu-Tang Clan was coming over to my house, David, at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know Wu-Tang enough to know they're not morning people. I thought the 8 blackest men alive were going to set 8 different alarm clocks and come across town to walk into my cracker house so I could interview them and help them with their careers. Meanwhile, I haven't worked in a year, and the last thing I did was a talking dog movie where I'm not even the lead dog. I'm like a receptionist at Chewy Vuitton. And I walked into my podcast room in my house, and there's like 15 people in there, and I go, you guys got to get out of here. Wu-Tang Clan's coming over. And then I saw
and they flipped it.
Yeah, I saw the interventionist. I was like, uh-oh.
Oh, damn. For the listeners, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm leaning away from the mic, wheezing because I'm laughing here. But that's wild.
David Musa.
You just kicked it off with two incredible stories. I mean, if we can laugh at an intervention, that's the way to do it, right? Like if we can laugh
and cry. Yeah, you gotta laugh.
Yeah,
I mean, because when your life gets to that point in addiction, you're so mentally gone. You're so consumed with I'm a pill guy. My thing was pills, like just more pills, pill math all the time. So you're so selfish and self-centered when they're like, oh, we got Wu-Tang Clan. You're like, great. Of course you did. Because I'm a big shot.
That's wild. Well, listen, you brought up the podcast, right? You brought up more stories, but like, that's just, when I said versatile in the intro there, like that's an understatement, right? I mean, stand-up comedy, TV shows, movies, media, radio. We talked about radio. You were doing it all. So like, what inspired you to, pursue comedy, acting, performing early in your career? Like, was there a defining moment when you said, this is my path? Was there something that made you say that?
With the risk of vomiting as I say it, I think comedy kind of chose me, which sounds like, ugh. But I was always so obsessed with comedy my whole life. Those old VHS tapes, I'd put that when I was in high school, junior high and high school, I'd put a VHS tape in the VCR when I went to bed at like 10. And I would hit record because they had like 4 hours of bandwidth, whatever it was called, space. Yeah. So just in case there was a comedian on The Tonight Show or David Letterman. And then I would just fast forward it when I got home from school to watch like that 5-minute thing. And I would just memorize it and obsess over it. And then I was watching a public access show in New Jersey. There was a comedy club in the next town over. And on public access, they had their comedians. I watched that religiously. I was just always obsessed with comedians. And then they had a commercial for teenage comedy night. And I was like, oh, it's just kind of like two Legos clicking together in my head. Like, oh, that's why, because that's what I'm going to do. So I did it. And it was like the first time I found my tribe. I went there and it was other teenagers and their parents. It was noon on a Sunday. It was awful. But then these guys were like, what are you doing? It was a Saturday. They go, what are you doing tomorrow? We go to this place in Montclair, New Jersey. I'm like, I'll be there. Then I go to that place and they go, Wednesday, there's this place in Hackensack. I was like, I'll be there. So suddenly I had like a place to go, people to see. And I love that camaraderie. And I just got obsessive about it. And I got really good at it. And then I realized I could get acting work from it. Then I would cater my stand-up in New York City to make sure there was acting stuff in it because producers would come and see you. In the early 90s, it was the Wild West. It was like comedy was everywhere. Every single place had comedy night and everybody was looking for the new thing. So they'd be like, all right, these producers are coming this night and that night. So I would do impressions. I would act. I would make myself cry on stage and make the audience uncomfortable and then let them off the hook. And then I got the Saturday Night Live audition. And then the other stuff I do, it was just like, did kind of like past tense. It was really just fear of missing out. And ego and pride. Like, well, if somebody's got a podcast, I want a podcast. Like, it's just childlike. Like, you have that, I have that. It's like when you were a kid in the backyard, you're jumping your bikes. Like, no, I can do it better than that. No, you can't beat me at wiffle ball. Watch this. And that's really everything I did was like just fear of missing out and just wanting to be noticed.
Yeah, that's a powerful motivator. It really is. I mean, it's a powerful motivator. But like, I mean, you're describing the comedy scene in the 90s, the way I kind of remember, it was kind of a golden age of comedy, right? Where everybody was looking for, it really was. So like what comedians influenced you the most in those early years? Like who did you grow up listening to and watching?
I probably listened to Dennis Miller's The Off-White album as much as any music album I've ever listened to. Yeah. It's just the way he put things together. It's hilarious. It's just beyond funny. But like the structure and the words, and then I segued into Carlin a lot. And then it was just my peers in Manhattan in 90 to 98. My manager owned a comedy club in the Village. I was at the Comedy Cellar, the Boston Comedy Club, the Village Gate, the Comic Strip, and Catch a Rising Star. But at the one place, the Boston Comedy Club, it would be me, Dave Chappelle, Dave Attell, Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neill. Neil Brennan worked the door and lived with me for about 2 years. Like Colin Quinn. This is every single night, Dave. When I tell you, it wasn't like, yeah, sometimes you run into these guys. I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for a decade, you would go to the club. There'd be 4 guys standing outside. They'd see you coming and be like, oh, shit, look at these skinny jeans coming towards you. You'd be like, you were already in a roast.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to Greg Fitzsimmons about this. It really should be a chapter in that book, where he talks about 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Just the impossibility that we were all there at that time, and we all were just like crabs in a barrel, climbing. Nobody really happy for anybody else's success. I learned that after Jerry Maguire. You do Jerry Maguire, you come back to the stoop and talk shit. It's not as warmly received.
Not the same. Yeah, you just mentioned a bunch of goats. Like it's wild. Like,
and we were all nobody. Dane Cook. I remember Dane Cook was on stage, and this guy came in with groceries. They would let people in the Boston Comedy Club for free just to fill it, so we'd have a place to go. And Dane Cook's on stage. This guy comes in and sits down with 2 grocery bags, and Dane goes, "You don't look very happy." He goes, "I got ice cream in here. You better be funny."
That's why we actually had Dane on, and he talked about the early days. Like it was wild. You mentioned George Carlin. And you know what's funny?
20 guys I didn't mention. Like, but it was
I know, yeah, but
yeah.
Dennis Miller. It's funny you mentioned Dennis Miller, because Dennis Miller was a genius. Like the way he crafted his jokes and his wit. And actually, it's funny you said that, because I kind of find you similar in terms of like wit and like very highbrow humor to Dennis Miller, right? Like, because well, I mean, you mentioned Chewy Vuitton. I mean, like this would go over people's heads, right? It really would. And I think
choreography that's stiff since the Lee Harvey Oswald prison transfer. Don't you love the fact that Jack Ruby got into the garage that day, huh?
Dude, well, like honestly, like Dennis Miller, I used to live for Dennis Miller's weekend updates, like because they were so damn funny.
And it was so damn cool. It was like,
he was. Yeah.
Cool. This is counterculture. In real time, we knew it was counterculture.
Yeah.
Like usually you don't know it until you're out of the woods, and it's 15 years later. You're like, oh wow, we were really against the grain and cool. I mean, I think his intro music every week was "Sympathy for the Devil," or
I can't remember. I can't remember. I just remember
about it.
He was just a genius, the way he would put his jokes together. And I remember them being so like you had to really pay attention, and that were so like intelligent, it was very highbrow. And I could see the influence there for sure. But you touched on a brief
trips to gigs, and it was Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, and Dennis Miller, the Off-White album. Like those are my 3 cassettes that I would just drive 8 hours and just listen to them over and over.
It's probably still your Spotify Wrapped. Probably still. Yeah. Same as me. Same as me 20 years ago, still listening to that stuff.
Yeah, my playlist when I'm in the gym is just like RZA, Bun B, Ice Cube.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jane's Addiction. Jane's Addiction, Nothing Shocking. That was the other one that was just like, could not stop listening. Like, what is going on with these guys?
And sure enough, he gets in that fight with Dave Navarro on stage.
He was on my podcast. He's tough to put a saddle on.
Is he? Yeah.
He comes to my house. I did More Stories podcast in my house in the Palisades in my garage. His wife pulls up in a Jaguar that's the biggest it was a comically huge Jaguar. It had to have been custom made. It was like an old Coupe de Ville, like 70s. It was so long. She hits my gate in my garage.
What?
And she goes, yeah, she pulls up and hits the front gate of my garage. I mean, of my driveway. The gate was closed. She hits it. She backs up. She looks out the window, Eddie, and she goes, you got to drive him home, so I'm not going to be there. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a problem. I would love to drive Perry Farrell home. He could live in Idaho. I'll be there. Great. Time alone with one of my heroes. So we're sitting in my garage, and I asked him, the question was loaded. What's the greatest concert you've ever seen? Because when he goes, how about yours? I get to say Jane's Addiction at the Ritz in 1991 before you guys broke up during Ritual de l'Habitual.
Yeah.
What's the greatest concert you ever saw? And he's like, Led Zeppelin, 1977, man, Miami. And they only played one song. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, it was raining. It was pouring rain. And they opened with Song Remains the Same. Do you know how that goes? I go, yeah. And then he proceeds to do the entire song. We're sitting like there's no table between us. We're just sitting like at it's like an AA meeting. We're just sitting like knee to knee. He's like, it starts with that, and he does the entire musical intro with his mouth, like 5 inches from my face. I'm like, this is bizarre. And then he's like, if I had a dream. And he goes, and then Robert Plant stops the concert because it was pouring rain. He goes, is everybody cool? And we're like, yeah, we're cool. He goes, we're going to take a break. Stay cool. Okay, we're going to stay cool. And then we watched Led Zeppelin fly away in a helicopter over our heads. I'm like, that's the best concert. He goes, it was the best, man.
Dude, I don't know what's funnier, the fact that was the best concert or the fact that Led Zeppelin trolled the audience that hard.
Is everybody cool? We'll be right back. In a Led Zeppelin chopper.
Oh my God, that's funny as hell, dude. This is
just looking up at Robert Plant, looking down at him.
I just want to say this interview is not good for somebody who's recovering from a cold. It's not good. It's funny as hell.
We were talking before we started. I had that chest cold for this is going on 4 weeks.
Yeah, I thought I was going to do okay, but I'm not sure now. Oh, Jesus. So that's funny. And oh, dude, where do I go from there? But I did want to ask you about this, though. You touched on Saturday Night Live. Like, you ended up on the cast of SNL. How did that happen exactly? Like, how did you end up with that audition, and how did you end up on the show?
The impossibility and the providence of circumstance and coincidences. My manager owned a comedy club, and he had Saturday Night Live auditions at the comedy club. So me being his client, who was an up-and-comer, obviously I was on that showcase. So this is early August. The Boston Comedy Club was on the second floor of an Irish bar, and it was like a ski lodge. It had it was like a A-frame.
Angled roof? Yeah.
Yeah. And on that day, the air conditioning was out. It was 100 degrees. It was awfully hot. And it's packed, and Marcy Klein's there from Saturday Night Live. All the producers are there. And I went up third because my manager, Barry Katz, who'd probably be a great guest here, we had this running joke, your best hitter hits third, like in baseball.
Yeah.
So I went up third. Everybody from Saturday Night Live couldn't take the heat. They left 2 minutes into the fourth guy. So 8 guys gave everything they had, not having any idea that there was nobody there from Saturday Night Live. If I went on 4th, 5th, 6th, I'm not talking to you on Zoom. I'm selling shoes. Who knows? And then my second audition was at, like 2 days later, it was at Stand Up New York, that was an away game for me because that club was weird. It was like an operating room. It was very sterile. It was just like a rectangle with lights and sterile and chairs and tables. And I thought I saw Lorne Michaels and everybody in the back left-hand corner of the room. So after every impression, when it was getting a laugh, I would stare into that corner to let them know like I wasn't afraid. And then when I walked off stage to my right, I walked past them. They were on the other side of the room. So I spent my most important audition of my life just staring at some like real estate broker from Long Island. But it worked. I went out, and then Marcy Klein ran out after me and said, Lorne wants to meet you. So he came out on the sidewalk. He shook my hand. And then, then I got put into the big leagues, having no idea how to play baseball.
Unreal. Like, you always hear these legendary stories, incredible stories about these household name performers over the years and their auditions for Saturday Night Live. And it almost lives in folklore, right? The show lives in this.
Yeah. Like if I did one of those auditions where it's just you alone in Studio 8H, I never would have gotten the show. I would die a horrible death. I'm doing impressions of like Andrew McCarthy. Like I'm doing the most weird impressions. Harvey Keitel before like Bad Lieutenant.
Yeah, Andrew McCarthy would be a funny one. Like, he just did a documentary, didn't he, on the Brat Pack or something like that? I didn't watch it, but
this is the whole impression. I love her, man. That was the whole thing. It was so stupid.
It's like Pretty in Pink.
I would mash up my impressions. Like I would do, and I learned this from watching. I was obsessed with the Ben Stiller show, the first version of it on MTV. It was just Ben Stiller and Jeff Kahn. and they would do like Rain Man, but on Star Trek. So like Captain Kirk, like Spock was Rain Man, like, yeah, I'm definitely a Vulcan. Yeah. And I was like, wow. So I would mash up my impressions being inspired by that. So I would do De Niro and Pesci, but they were Batman and Robin in the bat. Like, when do you stop eating, you fat bat bastard? You're like a nut. Your belly's hanging over the bat belt. You broke the bat pole. Look at you. Like, I would do that stuff. It was so weird. Like, if I had to do that alone in a studio with no one laughing, I would have killed myself. I would have killed myself in front of them.
That's funny. For those who don't know, what can you do you mind just running through what a typical week looks like at SNL?
Yeah, Monday I'd go in around 1. Everybody else would show up around 5. You meet the host at 7 in Lauren's office, and then you go in and you pitch shows to the host in Lauren's office. So Tuesday you go in and Lauren sits at his desk, the host sits at the desk, and Jim Downey sits at the desk. Everybody else is spread out in like a horseshoe around the desk, and you go around the room and you pitch ideas. Tuesday you write it, and that's all night. Wednesday you read it, every sketch. That takes like 3 hours. Wednesday night, they pick the sketches. It's like this huge waiting thing. It's like waiting for election results. And then it's like, okay, you guys can all go into Lauren's office to see what's on the wall. And the wall had like index cards, like cold open, monologue, sketch 1. And you just hope that the title of your sketch was up there. Thursday, so you either were super fired up Wednesday night or you were just so depressed that you did all that work for nothing. And then Thursday was a rewrite and rehearsal. Friday was rehearsal, maybe some other tweaks, rewrites. Saturday, you'd go in, rehearse again. They would write the monologue on Saturday. You always wonder, like, why is the monologue always so stupid? It's like, well, because they write it at the last minute. And then you do a dress rehearsal at 7, and you do the live show at 11:30. Sunday, you sleep until it's dark out, and then you go back Monday.
What a action-packed week. It's intense, right?
I wish I could do it again. I wish I could do it. It's a classic. If I knew then what I know now, I would just not be, I would just, to not care. Like Spade's like that. He just has this easiness about him.
Yeah.
And my only regret about Saturday Night Live is I wish I could have been there with like Bill Hader. He seems to like have the most fun. Bill Hader and Jim Brewer and Tracy Morgan are like the 3 guys. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Be able to write with those guys.
Jim Brewer is hilarious. Like, because I've seen interviews with him recently. Like, he's popped up recently on interviews, and he's really funny talking about. Actually, the hardest I've laughed is him talking about the last night he hung out with Lars from Metallica. Have you heard him tell that story? That is
who's done a Lars impression? It's the best. And Jim Brewer's made me laugh as much as any human being alive in real life hanging out. Like helpless. I'm helpless.
Yeah, he's funny. The other guy that I didn't appreciate him at the time, but I really appreciate him now is Norm MacDonald.
Yeah, Norm's the best, yeah. But yeah, you're I do a bit about the show Dateline, and when they interview the guys pending trial, the more they talk, the more they don't make sense. I say it's like talking to Norm MacDonald. It's like, it's true, I'm the last guy to see Patty alive, but that doesn't mean I killed her, yeah. And Norm's one of my favorite impressions to do. I love Norm. Who doesn't?
No, Norm, a fellow Canadian. Yeah, I appreciate him now more. Looking back, like again, golden age of comedy, golden age of Saturday Night Live. It hasn't been the same since the '90s. It really hasn't, in my opinion. But you mentioned a few that were interesting. What's your most standout memory from your time there, or maybe your favorite story from that show or that era of your career?
The first 10 are Chris Farley, the most beautiful man I ever met in my life. He was sober those 2 years I was there, and he was the most beautiful man I ever met in my life. He was just this a wrecking ball of joy and light. And when he came into a room, all you could do is look around and be like, is everybody seeing this? Like, he was always that beautiful and funny and great. So those are my number one memory, is that I got to be with that guy every day. Watching Nirvana, the bands on my 2 years there were, I think, the best 2 years of bands that have ever been on the show in a 2-year clip. I mean, Nirvana, Aerosmith, Beastie Boys, Smashing Pumpkins, Hole, Eric Clapton, James Taylor. It was ludicrous. Every week you just got to stand. I remember watching Aerosmith live during rehearsal, doing Sweet Emotion, and like I had to stop. Like I almost cried. Like I didn't know that song had its hooks in me, but like that Joe Perry get that air box, like with just the bass going. I just sat there like, oh my God, this is, I can't believe I'm watching this in this empty studio, watching Nirvana do Rape Me in rehearsal and watching Kurt scream. Like there was no other gear for these guys. They just went bananas in rehearsal. And then you get bands like Stone Temple Pilots, like, well, Scott doesn't want to sing because it's rehearsal. He's saving his voice. It's like, come on. Smashing Pumpkins. Then you get to go see them live because they're in town doing a gig. And you're like, I don't think people realize how hard Smashing Pumpkins rocked. Mm-hmm. It was its own zip code. That fuzzy guitar was bananas.
Yeah. I had the privilege of seeing them live a couple times. Yeah, they're unreal. It's funny. We were just talking about Smashing Pumpkins. My wife, the first time I met my wife, she was listening to Smashing Pumpkins, had her headphones in, and had to take them out to talk to me. She didn't want to talk to me, so she pretended, and it was Smashing Pumpkins. So special place in my heart. But then, you transitioned into movies, and as we mentioned, you did play the iconic role of Bob Sugar in the movie Jerry Maguire alongside Tom Cruise. And what people might not know is that was your first movie.
Yeah. I auditioned to be the quarterback played by Jerry O'Connell first. And I got a call back. But then when I had my call back, I just, for whatever reason that day, I couldn't do a Southern accent. It was so weird. I just could not get my act together. And then Cameron Crowe said, have you read the script? I said, yeah. He said, the part of the male nanny? I said, oh, yeah. He goes, do you want to try that one? I said, anything. So they had sides there, and they had me go out into the, again, providence, circumstance, cosmic coincidences. They had me go out in the hallway and read the script and come back when I was ready. The biggest speech in the male nanny's audition was when he says to Tom Cruise, I want you to use this. And he goes in his pocket. You think he's going to take out a condom, but he hands him a cassette. And it was a jazz cassette of Miles Davis and John. I had that cassette, and I was obsessed with jazz at the time. So I knew it was a speech like, this is two jazz masters at the peak of their craft, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley. Like I had that cassette and I knew everybody. So it was really easy for me to memorize because that's how I felt about it. And Cameron just wrote how I felt about it is how Cameron wrote about it. So I went in there, I looked at it. I'm like, I'm ready. I was ready like right away. And they thought I was some savant, and it went well. And then there was a weird quiet after I finished. And I mean, weird. I've never experienced that before where like no one was talking. There was like 8 people, Richard Sakai, Jim Brooks, Cameron Crowe's assistant, another producer, somebody from Sony. And then Jim Brooks just looks up and goes, hey, what about Sugar? And the hair on my neck stood up like, oh, like that's the role. And they all went, yeah. Like they were all afraid to say it. But I had like pro wrestler hair. Like I looked like Bret Hart. Like I had big bushy hair. Like I looked ridiculous. And what I didn't know then was they already had an offer out to Owen Wilson to play Bob Sugar because he did Bottle Rocket for Jim Brooks. Right. So they had to, by Jim Brooks saying that, they had to rescind Owen Wilson's offer, which never happens. So that's why everybody was like afraid to talk, I guess. And so they gave me a week to prepare for that. And bro, when Sony and Cameron Crowe and Jim Brooks give you a week to get something right, you get it right.
Yeah.
Like you get it right. You could have woken me up and said a line. I would have said the next line. And then I did the audition. I screen tested with Tom on a Saturday. I walked in, he was eating lunch, and I was like, well, there's strike one. I'm interrupting his lunch. But the best thing that happened in that screen test with Tom was he was completely off book. He knew all of his lines. And he tried to kill me with that scene. Like it was, we could have shot it. He wasn't like, no, it's fine. It was like, if you're gonna play against a club pro,
yeah,
you better swing.
Yeah.
So I was like, bro, I'm here to swing. Let's go.
Yeah. You know what's wild about that story is it's almost like the part of Bob Sugar almost looks like it was custom written for you. That's what it seems like to me, because you're playing, kind of a quick-witted, kind of, sharp, sarcastic dude. And it seemed like I didn't know that story. I don't know how many people know that story, but like,
picture Owen Wilson. I came here to fire you. This is crazy. Like firing my mentor. This is crazy.
Nah, that wouldn't
love me some Owen Wilson though.
Yeah, he's fantastic, but like the like that's crazy to me, because like I said, that part of Bob Sugar looks like it was almost custom written for you, So, and you talked about working with Tom Cruise. That must have been incredible. Like, what's something about Tom that surprised you on set? Do you have a favorite memory or interaction with him?
He's the coolest guy I've ever met in my life. He's like a guy. He's like a guy. He's like me and you. Like, he's just a dude that happens to be the biggest star in the world with that megawatt smile. And he treated everybody awesome. Every single person. I learned, if anybody else was my first like star to work with, you just copy cats. And in that space and time in my life, I got to copy the right cat. Like a quick example is when I would get done at the end of the day, I would take off my clothes in my trailer and just drop them on the couch and leave. And the wardrobe lady came over to me and said something like, we'd have your clothes ready for you a lot faster if you hung them up. And I thought she was being kind of snarky and shitty. And then I look at Tom Cruise, I go, yeah, I was a dick. I go, too bad I don't work in wardrobe. And he looks at me and goes, these girls bust their ass.
Yeah.
They really bust their ass. And I was like, ugh. So like ever since then, I just make sure my hung up at the end of the day, like nice. The socks are put together and put in the shoe and this and all the props, like a wedding ring or a watch, like put it, because they come in, like if you're there at 6:30, they're there at 5 getting your stupid clothes ready. Mm-hmm. So it's like just little things like that, like a little like a baby chick wandering, and he was just the guy to go, no, these girls bust their ass, man.
Yeah, he is known for his like intense dedication to his craft, right? Like, so obviously that energy would have like seeped into you a little bit, right? Like, did his energy or his approach to acting influence, the way he approached stand-up and movies after that and TV?
No, I like to work really hard once in a while.
I got it.
And I've never taken it that seriously, which is my career is probably like, well, how come that guy never just got to that next? I'm just having a good time. Like, I got it made. I love my life. Like, it's just playing make-believe to me. It's not like this big craft and this intense. There's been roles like in Playing by Heart. I was playing a guy dying of AIDS, and that was like, you can't be like goofing off on set. And that was a very intense, like dropping a ton of weight and acting sick, and you're with Ellen Burstyn. That's a thing that's important, and you got to make sure you honor that guy that's deceased because the writer knew a guy like that. But for the most part, like professional, yeah, but you're also dealing with like an alcoholic and a drug addict. So I self-sabotaged a lot along the way, like coming in late, not giving a shit, like, whatever, that's their fault, that's their problem. And I suffered consequences from that for sure. But so he showed me the right way to go, and I apply it once in a while.
Yeah. Well, he is a legend. I mean, and the longevity is, you can't deny it. And speaking of legends,
by the way,
yeah,
completely underrated actor.
Who?
Tom Cruise.
You think he's underrated?
Yeah, as an actor, like Vanilla Sky.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Like,
so he's like,
how hard it is to act a little bit crazy. Where like your best friend goes, what's going on with you? Like when Jason Lee's like, are you?
Yeah.
What? But like just that crazy.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like, you don't usually hear Daniel Day-Lewis, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Tom Cruise. But
and like Jerry Maguire, like that performance was one of the best acting performances. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Like his vulnerability with the little kid, Jonathan Lipnicki, when he shows up to Renee Zellweger's house drunk and he's going on and on about like, my dad worked for the, I don't know, United Way for 30 years. And when he retired, he says, I wish I had a more comfortable chair. And the kid goes, my dad died. And Tom's drunk and he goes, you're right, I'm hogging it. You go. Like,
Yeah.
it's heartbreakingly beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a beautiful movie. And, speaking of legends, you also worked with Christopher Walken, right? What was it like being on set with someone as iconic and unique as him?
It's like somebody put, like when you put cones down to save somebody's parking spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you put cones down, the spaceship lands, a complete foreign alien comes out and blesses you with this phenomenal experience. And then there's an old Irish expression, who's he when he's at home? No idea. He is amazingly bizarre and funny and great and everything. It's almost like you're watching someone, when he memorizes lines before you do a scene, it's almost like he's learning a song. Like he gets really into the quick answer is he's phenomenal. It's like you see him, instead of getting obsessed with what am I saying, where am I coming from, what do I want in this scene, where am I going? It's almost like he's learning a song. Like, it's lucky for you, I know who I know, and I do what I do. Otherwise, your girlfriend would be chopped minced meat by now. Like, it's a totally different approach that only works for him. And you realize how many different ways there is. There's no one way to greatness. Greatness is the way. And that guy just oozes greatness.
Yeah. Yeah, he really does. I mean, he's so unique, and I was going to ask.
He's become like this meme. Sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
he's become like this meme-ish kind of funny, like, hey, there he is. He's dancing in Fat Boy Slim, and this watch was in his ass. But if you go back and watch like The Deer Hunter, not only did he very deservedly win the Oscar for an insane, never will ever be captured, that Russian roulette scene in the Vietnamese prisoner of war camp, but an ethereal beauty, like one of the most beautiful to look at people that ever lived. Like, forget what you know about him. Go back and look at The Deer Hunter. He's mind-bogglingly gorgeous and phenomenally great in that role.
Yeah. Yeah. He's truly unique, and has started some of the, the greatest movies of my generation. He's one of those guys, you could put him in the top 5 of like these unique actors and characters that you remember.
David, how about that scene in The Deer Hunter when he's in the hospital after the prisoner of war and the military doctor is asking him questions?
Yeah.
And he just stares at him and he just starts crying. What?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's funny.
Enjoy your Marvel movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Enjoy your Marvel, all the CGI and everything else. And he's just,
enjoy the multiverse. It's never going to happen again.
It was funny. I was in Mexico City a couple of weeks ago, and there was somebody had it was a mural of Christopher Walken, like a street artist had created like a stencil, like a Banksy, but with like a Christopher Walken face on it. I took a picture of it. I was like, that's crazy, because he's
phenomenal.
It is. It's iconic. He's got an iconic face,
Here I am in Mexico for David.
Well, actually, I was going to ask if you had any, standout memories of working with him, but you tell an absolutely hilarious story about meeting him for the first time.
Yeah, I walk up to him to say hi. I had my Rottweiler with me because I'm on set. I got to bring my dog. I can't leave her alone for 15 hours. So I walk up to him with a Rottweiler, and he goes, I noticed that your dog doesn't have a tail. What happened to your dog's tail? Where did it go? And I'm like, Jesus. Oh, I'm standing there and all I can think is like, where the hell is my dog's tail? Like, I never thought about this. I bought a dog with no tail. Where? He's like, it would be great to have a tail. Everyone would know if you were angry or upset. Like, he's deep in the weeds of like how great it would be to have a tail. And then he looked at me like it was my turn to talk. And I said, would you rather be able to fly or have a tail? And he goes, a tail, of course. I'm so glad that you asked me that. You could always get on an airplane with your tail. And then he just turned around and walked away. And I spent the next 2 weeks like, am I going to, I don't know if we ever spoke again after that. But after that, you don't need to talk again.
No, that's it. That's all you need.
No, you know what? I saw him at the Copland premiere and I called him Elvis. I said, how you doing, Elvis? And he seemed to he gave me like a little smirk, like, I like that nickname.
You know, you've worked with some pretty big name actors and notable performers. You talked about your years on SNL, Tom Cruise, Christopher Walken, of course. And of course, I mean, you know, big name, performers on Jerry Maguire as well. Is there someone that stands out to you the most, or maybe someone who had the biggest influence on you?
Tom Cruise, that leaves a mark when you work with Tom Cruise. And being your first movie when you don't know what you're doing, and a guy like that to kind of hold your hand and say, no, you want to do it. You know, if you don't like the way this is going, just stop it mid-sentence. Don't worry about it. There's editors. There's Ellen Burstyn. That was the first time I saw someone transcend their actual who they were and become another person entirely. I wake up in a hospital. I'm dying of AIDS. She plays my mom in Playing by Heart. And I'm supposed to wake up in my hospital bed and look up at her. And my first line is, "You look awful." Like the big gag being like, I'm dying of AIDS. And he says his mom looks awful. I opened my eyes and I looked at Ellen Burstyn and I started crying. The pain in this woman's eyes, looking at her son dying. I've never seen anything like, she was not Ellen Burstyn. She was my mom. And I was watching my mom am I explaining this properly?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other time was Al Pacino in Simone, which I don't think anybody saw, but there's a scene where he creates this AI. Wow, that movie was ahead of its time. Gee whiz. He creates an AI actress to prove to everybody that he can direct great actresses. And she becomes the biggest star in the world. And she wins an Oscar, and he programs her via remote because she's in Africa saving children, and via remote her Oscar acceptance speech, ba, 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 ba. And then they go to commercial at the Oscars, and his daughter goes, "She didn't thank you." He forgot to have her thank him. And the pain in Pacino's face in that scene, and you're at like Long Beach Convention Center at 9 a.m, and you're surrounded by 80 extras. And it's just, I realized how out of my league I am as an actor when I work with people like that. Like, all you gotta do is look disappointed, but he didn't look disappointed. He was disappointed. Like, he transcended. I don't know. It was crazy.
That's wild.
So those two things really, really jump out at me. Chris Farley, Al Pacino, Ellen Burstyn.
But just think about those three names you just mentioned, right?
Oh, yeah. It's not lost on me.
Yeah, well, not that it would be. I'm just,
it was for decades lost on me, because it was just, you just live in this selfish, what about mine? Where's mine? What's going on? How come I'm not? How come what you did this wrong and I did? You get in that rat race and you don't have time to just really reflect. And it wasn't until I got sober where I can sit still by myself comfortably, and I can be comfortable being me all day for the first time, where I can look back at my career and go, gee whiz.
Yeah.
Like, it's like standing between Keanu Reeves and Forrest Whitaker every day for a month.
Yeah.
What the?
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man. Like, it's crazy, because when I was preparing for this interview and I went back and, went through your biography and some other things, and you got a career that's really tough to put into, a 1-paragraph intro. You've been around.
I'm a weird guy.
Well, but like, you've had an incredible career, comedy, TV, movies, radio, media, writing, right? Looking back, what career moments are you the proudest of, and why?
Writing my first book, Gasping for Airtime, it just took a year, like that discipline that I never had, except maybe just going up and doing stand-up every night. But to sit down and write all the time and write for a long time, and then just to hand that to someone else who just criticizes it and edits it and moves it around. But then when that process is done, and someone stops you in an airport. I remember being in a Chicago O'Hare airport, and this guy was going on vacation with his wife and kids, and he goes, "Man, I love your book." And this was like 2 years after it came out. And that's my most proud thing is professionally is that book, because when people see a movie, they're on their couch, they go to the movies, and then everything's very ephemeral. It's out, it's done, next. But a book, they carry it with them. And I remember being on the flight I was on after that interaction with that man. Like, that guy took it on vacation with him. It was on his nightstand. Like, when you have a book, you have it for a couple months.
Yeah.
Like, that guy he folded a page over to keep his space. When he went to the bathroom, he'd open it up while he was dropping a deuce. And he'd get home, and then, like, how you and I feel when we read a book, like when you're like, oh, my book. Like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm reading a great book. And like to think that somebody felt that way about what I wrote, which there wasn't really a lot of writing. I've never been a great writer. I've just always been a good reporter.
Good storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're a good, incredible storyteller. But like, are you currently reading books? Like, are you a book reader?
I read about a book a week.
Yeah. Okay. Good for you. Yeah. I only discovered, I know it sounds wild, but I only started reading books later in life, like where I started realizing. I stopped reading fiction for 20 years after I read Malcolm X in 1991. I remember I took that with me to the Bahamas on a show I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I was so sort of embarrassed that I didn't know anything about Malcolm X and that entire story, that Shakespearean drama of his own people are going to kill him because he taught them to take the word of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad over their own self-will and common sense. And being interviewed on Meet the Press, do you really think the black Muslims, it was only the black Muslims, even that was a little racist jab back then. Do you really think the black Muslims are going to kill you? And him just saying, oh, I know they will. I trained them to do it. Wow.
And being murdered in front of his kids at one of his own speeches. And I was so humbled by like how I didn't know anything about the real world. And then I got into presidential biography. I got big on biographies, presidential biographies I love. Nixon by Reeves was my favorite. And then McCullough's book on Truman blew me away. And then it wasn't until I was in rehab, all they had was John Grisham. And I picked up the John Grisham book, and I'm like, this guy's pretty good. I'm 50 years old reading. Yeah. 50 years old reading The Firm. Like, have you guys heard of John Grisham? The world's like, yeah. We read that when we were 20, jerk.
Yeah, exactly. What are the top? Well, here's a question. We have a book that's not a book, sorry, a show that's big on personal development and whatnot. What's top 3 books you've ever read off the top of your head? Can you think of them? Most impactful, maybe.
Malcolm X, Ham on Rye. 3's tough. Ham on Rye, Mikowski, I could go back to over and over and over, because that closing, the way he closes with the Rock'em Sock'em robots in the bar, but his spider's arm is broken. He just can't beat this little kid. It's like everything in his life is like that. And it ends in a bar with the same thing. A Prayer for Owen Meany, maybe. But no, This Much I Know Is True by Wally Lamb really knocked me out.
Interesting. Don't know it.
Oh, it's heartbreaking, yeah. Oh, no. Shot in the Heart, Michael Gilmore.
Oh, okay.
I put that book down in the trailer of Jerry Maguire, and I cried. It's about Gary Gilmore is the last man put to death by firing squad. Executioner song is about him. And I just couldn't believe it. And I put that book down in my trailer. They called me to set, and Cameron Crowe goes, are you okay? Think about that. A book that when you walk into a room an hour later, a person that doesn't really know you that well goes, are you okay? And I said, no, I just read this book, Shot in the Heart by Michael Gilmore. He goes, he's a friend of mine. You want to meet him? I was like, no.
Wow.
He wrote with him at Rolling Stone. Michael Gilmore wrote at Rolling Stone with Cameron.
Wow.
Yeah,
man, your life. You got to write another book, Jay. You got to write another book. Like, you have to.
I know, and it would be about recovery, but it's I was in my mind, I was gung-ho about it. And then the whole thing about recovering is putting your ego aside every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know if I can separate my altruism, which is probably 8%, versus my pride and ego and self-esteem, which is 92% in that equation. Because I can't. It would help so many people. Yeah, but I'm going to wonder how it's doing on the bestseller list. So I'm wrestling with that. And I'm 54, bro. I don't want to work that hard.
Well, come on. I mean, we got AI now. You can just, dump all the transcriptions in there. And
I'm from the heart. I'm not an AI guy. It's all about that heart.
I know, but just these stories, like for the last, hour, we've been talking, about these incredible stories. I mean, they're wild. I feel like you need to write a memoirs at some point. Maybe you'll get inspired at some point, and that'll happen. It seems like stand-up has always been your foundation. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's what I am.
Yeah, you're a stand-up comedian. Like, how has your approach to, comedy evolved over the years? And here's a question I wanted to ask you. What do you think makes a great stand-up comedian?
Balls, persistence, perseverance, and balls. Like, I'll see guys that just keep doing the same stuff over and over and over, and then they complain about, like, where's my break? And I'm like, I just keep my mouth shut. My stand-up is always, again, doing it 37 years. I've just started to wrap my head around this at year 36. Like, what's your comedy? It's like, I don't know. I've always gotten, my biggest satisfaction is when I'm sharing things with you that you can't believe I'm actually sharing with you about me, my favorite subject, me. So when I'm telling you about rehab and what it's like to detox from pills, and you get so uncomfortable, but at the same time, it has to be hilarious. Otherwise, the uncomfortable isn't worth it. I never want to make the audience uncomfortable unless I'm going to take them off the hook with the huge punchline. So that's always been my stand-up has always been that. That's why it's always hard for me. Like, I don't consider doing stand-up. I don't consider impressions stand-up. It's a completely different brain. There's algebra, there's geometry. Impressions is geometry, stand-up is the algebra. So I'll mix them in, obviously. Like, I'll mix in Joe P when I'm talking about getting mad at my doctor. I'll do Norm Macdonald talking about Dateline. But, like, to just stand up there and do 20 minutes of impressions, I feel like I'm cheating. But I also got to get over that because the audience likes it. So I get over that and I do it. But if you're a comic, you got to have balls. You got to talk about, like, people go, I can't believe you talk about going to rehab. It's like, well, it's kind of the most important, impactful thing in my life. What else would I talk about? Like, I'm going to talk about going to Whole Foods. Well, shopping carts are crazy.
Yeah, but what's funny is when you're so open about your struggles and your past, things like that. I don't know if you appreciate how it helps others. When people are open and vulnerable with these things, like, it really helps others. We had we recently had Richard Patrick on from Filter, 9 Inch Nails, frontman. Remember 9 Inch Nails and Filter? I don't know if you listen to that music, but
hey man, nice shot.
Yeah, him. And he's been really open about his rehab and everything he went through, and how it's helping others. And it was kind of an impactful moment, like when you realize that when you tell your story and you're open about it, it makes others feel okay to talk about it and seek help and all that type of stuff. So it's
a dance, because one of the traditions is we maintain anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. So the way I've squared that away, I don't make any decisions by myself anymore. Because when I make my own decisions, I stand in line for medication without shoelaces or a drawstring in my pants at a rehab. There's always a sponsor, there's always a peer, there's always a guy. So the way I do it is I talk openly about recovery and a 12-step program. I leave the second A out of it. And the reason that is because if somebody goes on and on about the specific brand of recovery that I'm not talking about right now, and then I relapse, then it gives a newcomer a reason to look at it and go, see, it doesn't work. That they're full of shit over there. Look at him. It's all he talked about and he relapsed. So that's what was taught to me, is the intent behind that tradition of anonymity. But the actual anonymity tradition comes from when it started in the 30s, late 30s, early 40s. They didn't have enough manpower to take on all the people that were compiling in. It was just, it started 3 guys in a hospital room, and it just grew into this hundreds of millions of people saved. So they had to just kind of like keep it under your hat, but we're going to meet at so-and-so's house. And we stay sober by helping other guys, because when we're helping somebody else, we're not thinking about ourselves.
Right.
So that's the real genesis of the anonymity was they didn't have the manpower to keep up. And then in the traditions, it's written at the level of press, radio, and film. And it was just told to me, like, you can't give a newcomer a reason to look at it as an example of why not to do it.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that, being open about it. That's really cool. Obviously, like, you've been talking about, you got to help yourself and you got to commit and, kind of really, really it's just like time for introspection, reflection, all that type of stuff when you go through something like that. What's helped you the most? Like, do you have a daily routine you follow that's really helping you?
Morning routine is the linchpin of it. Because, you wake up, you just get shot out of a cannon and whatever happens that day happens. Like, maybe I'll go to the car wash. Maybe I'll buy scratch-off tickets. Maybe I'll see her. I pray the moment I get up. I was told I have to get to God before my mind gets to me. So I don't get out of my bed. I don't stand up. I slide out of my bed onto my knees. I say a 3rd-step prayer, a 7th-step prayer. I ask God to show me who I can help today. Make my bed. I write a gratitude list every single day. I send that to about 40 other guys back and forth. I call my sponsor between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. My sponsees call me, take my son to school. I go on an 8 a.m. men's Zoom meeting. 9:30, I go to the gym. By 11 a.m., I've kicked the shit out of the day before lunch. If you want self-esteem, do esteemable acts. So when I first got sober, all the commitments I did and all the things I would do, the good things I did in the rooms, like I'd go to meetings, I'd go early, I'd clean up, I'd clean toilets, I'd make the coffee, I'd stay late, I'd give guys rides. It wasn't this sense of altruism. It was, I'm an approval addict. My first addiction, David, is your approval. I don't know how to act if you don't like me. I short circuit. So I'm always being a chameleon, whichever group of people I'm in, I just do it so they like me there. So when I'm the result of that is when I'm by myself, I have no idea who I am and I'm uncomfortable. So I use and I drink. So I did all these esteemable acts, not out of like a sense of altruism or greater good. I wanted my sponsor to think I was the greatest member of that program that ever lived. I knew, like, if I went there early, made the coffee, swept the floors, I knew my sponsor was going to walk in with another old timer. And in my mind, they were going to be like, there goes the greatest member we've ever had. Thank God he's here. Ego, 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 ego. But in my quest to get his approval, by doing those things all the time, I wound up getting my own approval. And I wound up really liking the way I was acting. And then people would say things to me like, I called you because I knew you'd pick up. And that's a very fulfilling way to live your life, to have a life of purpose. My sons will call me. They know I'm going to pick up. My wife knows where I am all the time. I wake up with a quiet mind. I wake up with a full heart, and I have purpose. I'm going to go to a place at noon today, hang out with other men that share similar miseries, and we all share a common solution. And if anybody there says, could I talk to you for a second? Yeah. Because these men, it's hard to talk about without getting choked up. Like, these guys, the greatest thing these men have done for me, what made the biggest impression on me in my entire life, is they simply made time for me. And as the child of an alcoholic that always wondered where everybody was, wanted to know if he was safe and am I going to be okay? The fact that a guy, whenever I call him, picks up, and whenever I bring something to him, has a solution for me. That's another dimension now. So all those movies and all that resume stuff, it's impressive, but it can't touch where I'm at today.
Yeah. Man, I really appreciate you being open about that and sharing that. That's a powerful, reflection on what you've been doing. And it's been 4 years of recovery for you?
3 years, 9 months. Oh, I got a little app on my phone, which amazingly hasn't rung during this podcast, because 3 years
meant to be.
3 years, 24 days.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay. Well done.
Only 1,365 days.
Well done, Jay. But like that's something that's going to help somebody else who listens to this.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing.
And I believe in, karma and things meant to be and things like that. So somebody's going to hear this and it's going to help them, or it's going to inspire them to get some help at some point. So I think that's fantastic. And, you talked about, needing approval or whatever. Our subconsciouses, everything are the things we went through as, as children and youths and things like that. And it manifests itself later in life. And we look back and, memories come to the forefront. Now, if you could go back and give your younger self advice at the start of your career, or another way to ask, like, is there anything that you wish you knew before you started your career? Maybe mistakes or lessons learned. Is there anything you wish?
I would tell myself, get in an acting class and stay there. Mm-hmm. I have no idea how to act. None. Here's me acting. Not my turn. Not my turn. Oh, my turn's coming up. Words. Not my turn. Like I just memorize it and everything. So I would say, get in an acting class and stay there. So you have an actual kit, a tool kit to use when you're maybe not at your best. And I would just tell myself everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. I mean,
I would say, don't turn down Blue Streak with Martin Lawrence. You're going to regret it.
Oh, did you turn that movie down? I didn't know you turned that down.
I didn't. Well, to be very clear, I didn't turn it down. I auditioned for it like 6 times.
Wait, that was Luke Wilson, right? Luke Wilson. Yeah. Screen
test. And then they go, okay, I know it's a lot, but they want to see you again. And I'm like, Jesus, ego. They saw me so many times. And they go, this is going to be the last time. I go, this is going to be the last time? I'll do it if it's going to be the last time. So I went in for the last time. Then I flew to New York. I was performing at Caroline's on Broadway for $10,000. And my agent called me and said, they want you to go back to LA and screen test with Martin. And this idiot goes, they said that was the last time. And I put my foot down. I go, I got 10,000 in my hand. A bird in the hand's worth more than 2 in the bush. And I remember my manager, Barry Katz, going, if this movie goes on to make $100 million without you, are you going to be okay with that? I'm like, yeah. It made a lot more than $100 million.
Wow. I didn't know that story, but lessons learned. We learn more from our mistakes.
At the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? Great. It's only money. It's only money. Who cares?
Rushmore, Luke Wilson.
Yeah. It's only money. Okay,
Luke
so
Wilson, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome, Luke.
Tell Owen I'm sorry.
Well, there you go. Hey, the universe has a way of correcting itself. So what are you working on now that excites you the most? Like, what should fans look forward to in the near future for you?
I just stand up. I mean, I put myself on tape for an audition last night. I got nothing to promote. I'm just here to have a good talk with a podcast I like. Mohr 37 on Instagram. Hit me up. I just love my life. I'm about recovery. Like I mean, I don't even want to say like hate to be that guy, but like, no, I'm that guy. Like I have a completely different employer these days. And I help guys get free. That's the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced in my life. I married my best friend at 50 years old. So here's how recovery worked for me. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, I thought she did my intervention and I was pissed. And I packed for rehab staring at her, just angry looking at her the whole time. And then I got to rehab and all I had was 15 pairs of socks because I never looked down. And when I was in rehab, I was living in Malibu on the beach. And when I say on the beach, David, I mean at high tide, water would hit my window after it smashed against the seawall. It would come over. And when I was in rehab, my landlord took all my stuff, put it on the beach, and told my family, tell him to come get his shit. The tide's coming up. He'd had it with me. Sober 2 years, I marry that woman on that beach by that guy as the tide's going out. So what am I working on? I'm working on that, bro.
Wow. That's like, that gives me goosebumps.
If Hollywood wants me, they know where to find me. And if they don't, that's cool with me too, bro.
That gives me goosebumps.
I got a great life. 54 years old, married my best friend. I got 2 sons that look up to me. I got 3 idiot dogs.
Okay, so final 2 questions, and these are fun ones. These are fun ones, okay? If you could have dinner with any 3 people in history, past or present, who would they be and why?
Well, you got to go Jesus and just see like how much of it is story, how much of it is real. anybody that had that cosmic consciousness at that age, where he still, I mean, he kind of, he seems like he's a pretty big deal these days.
Yeah.
I would go Jesus, my mom. I'll go musician. I'll go Jesus, my mom, and I'll go musician. It'd probably be like Miles Davis was kind of a jerk. I'll go John Coltrane-ish, but I'm not happy with that answer, just so you know.
It's a tough one. I know you get put on the spot, and it's tough to narrow it down to 3 people. But what a dinner table that would be, Jay. What a dinner table that would be. Jesus, your mom, and we said Coltrane, not Davis, right? So
Miles, nobody wants to have dinner with Miles Davis.
Well, Jesus' number one answer we get.
Who's more fascinated? Like, did you really do this? Did you really tell me what's up? Yeah. How much of this is promotion? How much of this really went down? And if at the end of the day, they wrote all these fascinating stories because you just had this overwhelming conscious awareness that nobody else could deal with, I'm totally cool with that too.
Yeah.
You changed civilization because you said things that blew people's minds.
Yeah.
Like who else would I want to talk to? Kanye?
Yeah. I don't actually. Kanye was on my list forever, and then he just recently came off. He was actually on my list. I think he's got a.
I'm gonna replace Coltrane with Buddy Hackett.
Oh wow! Okay.
My mom and Buddy get to hang. One of my dearest friends and my best friend, my mom, and then we get to just pepper Jesus. And Hackett goes, you could have used a bicycle. All that walking.
Dude, funny Hackett. The kids don't know. The kids would never know.
All right.
Kids would never know. Okay, and final question. This stuff. I interview captains of industry, billionaires, CEOs, and they have a hard time answering this. You're opening a bottle of. You're opening a bottle.
No,
sparkling cider 1 year from now, celebrating something you've accomplished. What would that be?
Well, the only answer really is another year of sobriety. But for entertainment purposes, I'll say a show that I've created and I have creative control over that me and my friends get to have a blast at.
Mm-hmm. Are you breaking some news?
I'm from New Jersey, bro. I don't know nothing. I was in the bathroom.
we need to, final question. Where can the people find you, follow you? I think you mentioned your Instagram or
Mohr37.
Mohr37. That's where we keep up to date on where you're playing and all that type of stuff,
sure.
Right? Listen, Jay, this has been fantastic for me. Like I said, I've been following you for forever, and you're one of the funniest dudes I know. You've been super real and absolutely fantastic. So I really appreciate you coming on and spending some time.
Dude. Thank you. I had a great time.